The gunshot piercing the afternoon quiet of Jefferson, Arizona Territory, 1878, might have gone unnoticed by most, but not by Nathaniel Reed. She knew exactly what it meant. Someone had just died because of her. 3 deaths since her arrival in town 4 months ago, and the whispers that had followed her from Missouri were growing louder with each passing day. They called her a curse, said death shadowed her footsteps, claimed her honey gold hair and green eyes bewitched men before leading them to their graves. The body of Tom Wilkins now lay sprawled in the dusty street, another victim of a duel that had started with a smile in her direction. She hadn't encouraged him, she never did, but that hardly mattered to the townspeople gathering around the saloon, their accusatory glances cutting through her like knives. "You've brought nothing but trouble since you set foot in Jefferson," Martha Higgins spat as Nathaniel hurried past, her skirts gathered in trembling hands. "My Harold never touched a drop before she came," another woman muttered. "Now he's at the saloon every night, making eyes at that cursed woman." Nathaniel quickened her pace, keeping her gaze fixed on the boardwalk ahead. The general store was only 50 yards away. Mr. Palmer wouldn't refuse to sell her flour and beans. He needed the business too badly to turn away a paying customer, no matter what his wife might say about it later. The bell above the door jangled as she entered, and the quiet conversations inside stuttered to silence. 3 women huddled near the fabric display averted their eyes as if her gaze alone might bring misfortune. Mr. Palmer's greeting was stiff but civil as he took her list. "Expecting trouble?" a deep voice drawled from behind her. Nathaniel turned to face a man she'd never seen before, tall and broad-shouldered, with sun-bronzed skin and eyes the color of a summer storm. His clothes were trail-worn, dusty from long riding, but the 6-shooter at his hip gleamed with careful maintenance. A cowboy, and a stranger to Jefferson. "I don't expect it," she replied evenly, "but it seems to find me all the same." The stranger's mouth quirked upward at one corner. "Name's Adam Sullivan, just rode in from Tucson way." "Miss Reed," she said, not offering her given name. No point in getting familiar with someone who'd soon hear the stories and avoid her like everyone else. "That all you're called?" His eyes crinkled with amusement. "Or do folks have other names for you?" Mr. Palmer paused in his gathering of her supplies, watching the exchange with undisguised interest. "They call her a curse," he volunteered, his voice carrying in the now silent store. 3 men dead since spring on her account." Adam Sullivan's gaze never left Nathaniel's face. "That's so." Her chin lifted. "I've never asked any man to fight for my honor or attention, Mr. Sullivan. And yet they do. It wasn't a question. Fools, the lot of them," Mrs. Palmer added from the doorway to the storeroom. "Bewitched by a pretty face, only to end up 6 feet under." Adam Sullivan studied Nathaniel for a long moment, then turned to Mr. Palmer. "I'll take a pound of coffee and some jerky. Riding with me is hungry work." Nathaniel paid for her supplies and gathered them into her basket. As she turned to leave, Sullivan stepped aside, tipping his hat with exaggerated courtesy. "Miss Reed," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "if men are foolish enough to kill each other over a woman who's shown them no favor, then that's their choice. A curse has no choice in who it affects." She paused at the doorway. "You might want to reserve judgment, Mr. Sullivan. You haven't been in Jefferson long enough to know what's true." "I know fools when I see them," he replied, his voice dropping, "and desperate people looking for someone to blame." The bell jangled again as she stepped out into the late afternoon sun. Behind her, she heard Mrs. Palmer's warning, "Best keep your distance from that one, Cowboy. Men who cross her path don't live long." Adam's response floated through the closing door, "Then I'm proud to be your chosen fool." Nathaniel nearly stumbled on the boardwalk. No one had defended her since her arrival, not once. Gripping her basket tighter, she hurried toward the small cabin she rented on the edge of town, away from prying eyes and venomous tongues. The stranger's words echoed in her mind as she walked. She hadn't asked for his defense, and it would likely do him more harm than good. By tomorrow, he'd hear all the stories, embellished with each telling. He'd hear how her husband had died mysteriously back in Missouri, how the banker who tried to court her afterward had been found with a knife in his back, how everywhere she went, men died. What they wouldn't tell him was the truth that her husband had beaten her for 3 years before a fall down the stairs took his life, that the banker had been killed by a rival for skimming from accounts, that she'd come west to escape not her past, but the lies that surrounded it. The cabin came into view as she rounded the bend in the road. It wasn't much, 2 rooms with a small porch, but it was hers, paid for with honest work at the dressmaker's shop. Inside these walls, she could breathe without feeling judgment pressing down on her chest. As she approached, she noticed a figure on her porch. Her heart stuttered until she recognized Sheriff Davis, his expression grim beneath his gray mustache. "Miss Reed," he said, rising from the chair she kept outside, "we need to talk." "If it's about Tom Wilkins, I had nothing to do with that foolishness," the sheriff sighed. "It's not just Wilkins. People are scared, Nathaniel. 3 men dead in 4 months. Folks are starting to talk about more than just gossip." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying there's been talk of running you out of town. For your own safety, you might consider moving on." Her fingers tightened on the basket handle. "I haven't done anything wrong. Doesn't matter much in times like these. People need someone to blame when things go wrong." He adjusted his hat. "Just think about it. I can't guarantee I can protect you if things turn ugly." After the sheriff left, Nathaniel sat on her porch, watching the sun sink behind the distant mountains. Leave Jefferson. Where would she go? She'd spent nearly everything she had to get here to start fresh. Each time she moved, the whispers followed, growing louder, more vicious. The sound of approaching hoofbeats drew her attention. A rider approached her cabin, Adam Sullivan, his figure silhouetted against the darkening sky. "Evening, Miss Reed," he called, dismounting in one fluid motion. "Hope I'm not intruding." "What do you want, Mr. Sullivan?" Her voice was weary, the day's events weighing heavily upon her, information mostly. He tied his horse to the porch rail. "Mind if I sit?" She gestured to the vacant chair. "You're about to hear all manner of terrible things about me in town. Why bother asking me directly?" Adam lowered himself into the chair, stretching his long legs out before him. "Because I've found that town gossip rarely contains the whole truth." "And you're interested in the truth?" Skepticism colored her tone. "I make it a policy not to judge folks before I know their story." He pulled a small cloth pouch from his pocket and began rolling a cigarette. "Besides, I'm new in town, got no reason to believe one side over another." "What do you want to know?" "Whatever you're willing to tell me." He struck a match against the arm of the chair, the flare illuminating his face in the growing dusk. "Start with your first name, maybe." Despite herself, a small smile tugged at her lips. "Nathaniel." His eyebrows raised slightly. "Unusual name for a woman." "My father wanted a son. He got me instead, but kept the name he'd chosen." She looked out across the darkening land. "He died when I was 16, influenza." Adam nodded, smoke curling from his cigarette. "And the husband?" Her gaze snapped to his face. "You've been asking questions already." "Just mentioned that you were a widow to Mr. Palmer when I paid for my supplies." He was quick to fill in certain details. "I'm sure he was." Nathaniel's voice had gone cold. "My husband fell down the stairs during an argument. The town decided I pushed him, though there wasn't a witness to be found." "Did you?" The bluntness of his question startled her. "No, though there were nights I considered it when his fists left me barely able to stand. Adam's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes hardened. The banker, killed by a business rival over stolen money. But because he'd been calling on me, somehow I became responsible for his death too. She stood abruptly. And now 3 men in Jefferson have died because they couldn't settle their differences without resorting to violence. Each had spoken to me, smiled at me, perhaps bought me a drink at the saloon where I sing on Saturday nights. That was enough for this town to decide I'm cursed. Adam stubbed out his cigarette on the porch rail. Seems to me like you've had a run of bad luck with the men you encounter. A bitter laugh escaped her. Is that what you call it? What would you call it? A life of having no say in what happens around me, yet bearing all the blame for it. She wrapped her arms around herself against the evening chill. Sheriff Davis thinks I should leave town. Would that solve anything? Adam asked quietly. It never has before. The admission hung in the air between them. They sat in silence as full dark settled over the land, stars pricking the velvet sky one by one. From town came the faint sounds of piano music and raised voices another Saturday night at the Silver Dollar Saloon. You mentioned singing at the saloon, Adam said eventually. You sing tonight, Nathaniel nodded. I should be getting ready. Mr. Forster pays me $5 for 3 hours of songs. It's half my weekly income. Then I believe I'll be attending tonight's entertainment. Adam stood, his tall frame casting a long shadow in the light spilling from her window. May I escort you to town, Miss Reed? She studied him, this strange cowboy who seemed determined to ignore the warnings about her. You're not concerned about the curse. 3 men dead, Mr. Sullivan. Adam, he corrected. And no, I'm not concerned. I've faced worse odds and lived to tell the tale. What brings you to Jefferson anyway? You never said. A shadow crossed his face. Business. The kind that might keep me around for a spell. What kind of business? The kind that pays. He offered no further explanation. Shall we? Against her better judgment, Nathaniel agreed to his escort. As they walked toward town, she stealing glances at his profile in the moonlight, she wondered what kind of fool this cowboy might prove to be and why. Despite all reason, she found herself hoping he might be different from the others. The Silver Dollar Saloon blazed with light and noise, a beacon of activity in the otherwise quiet town. Adam led his horse behind them, unwilling to leave the animal at her cabin so far from town. As they approached, the piano music grew louder, joined by laughter and the clink of glasses. I should warn you, Nathaniel said, stopping before they reached the saloon's swinging doors. Being seen with me won't make you popular. Adam tied his horse to the hitching post. I've rarely aspired to popularity, Miss Reed. You're stubborn, Mr. Sullivan. Adam, he corrected again, offering his arm. And yes, it's been noted before. The saloon fell into a hush as they entered together, conversation stuttering to silence before resuming in hushed tones. Nathaniel felt the weight of every stare as Adam escorted her to the bar, his hand warm against her back. Whiskey, he told the bartender, then glanced at Nathaniel. And whatever the lady would like. Just water for now, she said. I need to keep my voice clear. The bartender, a heavy-set man named Morris, set down the drinks with a scowl. Cutting it close tonight, Nate. Forster's been asking after you. I'm right on time, Morris. She took a sip of water, conscious of Adam watching her. Your usual crowd of admirers will be disappointed you came with company, Morris added, his gaze flicking to Adam. I'm sure they'll survive the disappointment. Her tone was dry. Adam leaned against the bar, surveying the room with casual interest. Quite a place you have here. It serves its purpose, Morris replied. You passing through or staying depends on how certain business goes. Morris nodded as if this explained everything. You know about her. He jerked his chin toward Nathaniel. Adam's expression remained neutral. I've heard some talk. Then you've been warned. Morris moved away to serve another customer. Nathaniel sighed. See what I mean? I see a lot of frightened people looking for simple explanations to life's complexities, Adam replied, his voice low enough that only she could hear. It's easier to blame a beautiful woman for men's foolishness than to accept that some folks are just prone to violence. The compliment caught her off guard, warming her cheeks. Before she could respond, a hand clasped her shoulder. There's my songbird, Edwin Forster, the saloon's owner, said expansively. A short man with a walrus mustache and expensive taste in waistcoats, he had been one of the few in Jefferson to treat Nathaniel with consistent kindness. Was beginning to think you might not show. I wouldn't miss it, Mr. Forster. Good, good. His gaze shifted to Adam. Don't believe we've met, stranger. Adam Sullivan. They shook hands. Just arrived today. Forster's bushy eyebrows rose from here and there. Adam's smile revealed nothing. Heard Miss Reed would be singing tonight. Thought I'd enjoy some entertainment. Best voice in 3 counties, Forster boasted. Been trying to convince her to perform every night, but she's particular about her schedule. He turned back to Nathaniel. Ready whenever you are, my dear. Crowd's thirsty and they drink more when you sing. As Forster moved away, Nathaniel finished her water and straightened her skirts. That's my cue. I'll find a good vantage point, Adam said, lifting his whiskey in salute. She made her way to the small raised platform at the far end of the room, nodding to the piano player. The crowd's attention gradually shifted her way as she took her position, smoothing her dark blue dress, a simple garment made elegant by her own skilled needlework. When she began to sing, the remaining conversations in the saloon dwindled to nothing. Her voice, clear and rich, filled the room with a bittersweet ballad of love lost and found again. Adam watched from his spot near the bar, his expression unreadable as she moved through her repertoire of songs, some melancholy, others lively enough to have miners and cowboys stomping their boots in appreciation. Between songs, she noticed a commotion at the door. 2 men entered, trail-worn and hard-eyed, scanning the room with purpose. When they spotted Adam, something in their posture changed, a subtle tensing that Nathaniel recognized from years of anticipating her husband's moods. Trouble. The men made their way toward the bar, positioning themselves on either side of Adam. Though they appeared to be simply ordering drinks, Nathaniel could see the stiffness in Adam's shoulders. Words were exchanged, too quiet to hear over the piano player's interlude. She forced herself to continue singing, but kept her eyes on the developing situation. One of the men, taller, with a scar cutting through his left eyebrow, placed a hand near his holster. Adam said something that made both men glance toward Nathaniel, then back to him with narrowed eyes. When the song ended, she nodded to the piano player to continue without her and made her way through the crowd. As she approached, she caught fragments of their conversation. Doesn't concern her, Adam was saying, his voice low but firm. Everything concerns us when it comes to you, Sullivan, the scarred man replied. Especially women you take a sudden interest in. Gentlemen, Nathaniel interrupted, her voice carrying the authoritative tone she used to quiet rowdy patrons. Is there a problem? All 3 men turned to her. The second stranger, shorter, with a neatly trimmed beard, recovered first. No problem, madam, just catching up with an old friend. Didn't realize Mr. Sullivan had friends in Jefferson, she said coolly, since he only arrived today. We go back further than that, the scarred man said, his smile not reaching his eyes. Way back to Texas, ain't that right, Sullivan? Adam's expression remained carefully neutral. Miss Reed, these men were just leaving. They've mistaken me for someone else. No mistake, the bearded man insisted. "We know exactly who you are." The tension between them crackled like heat lightning before a storm. Nathaniel had seen enough confrontations to recognize when violence trembled on the horizon. "Mr. Forster doesn't allow fighting in his establishment," she said firmly. "Whatever business you have can surely wait until morning." The scarred man's gaze slid from Adam to Nathaniel, assessment in his cold eyes. "Heard they call you a curse in these parts. That men who cross your path end up dead. You shouldn't believe everything you hear," she replied evenly. "Maybe not." He leaned closer, his breath sour with whiskey. "But if I were you, I'd ask your new friend here what name they called him back in Laramie. Might make you reconsider the company you're keeping." Adam's hand moved slightly toward his holster. "That's enough, Reeves." The bearded man smirked. "We'll see you around, Sullivan, count on it." He nudged his companion and they backed away, keeping their eyes on Adam until they pushed through the saloon doors into the night. The moment they left, conversations resumed, but Nathaniel could feel curious gazes fixed on them. "Friends of yours?" she asked quietly. Adam downed the rest of his whiskey in one swallow. "Not exactly. They seem to know you well enough. It's complicated." His jaw was tight, eyes still fixed on the door. "Complicated." She echoed the word with a hint of irony. "You should fit right in with Jefferson's other complications, then." His expression softened slightly as he looked at her. "I'm sorry about the interruption. Your singing is even more beautiful than I'd expected." The compliment felt like a diversion, but she accepted it with a nod. "I need to finish my set. Mr. Forster is paying me for 3 hours." "I'll be here," Adam assured her. As she returned to the platform, Nathaniel found herself wondering who exactly Adam Sullivan was and what kind of danger he might be bringing to her doorstep. For all the talk of her being a curse, it seemed this mysterious cowboy carried shadows of his own. The remainder of her performance passed without incident, though she noticed Adam's gaze constantly sweeping the room, alert for any sign of the two strangers returning. When she finished her final song to enthusiastic applause, he was waiting near the edge of the small stage, his hat in his hands. "May I see you home?" he asked, voice pitched low beneath the noise of the crowd. She studied him for a moment. "Are those men likely to return?" "Not tonight," he said with a certainty that raised more questions than it answered. "But I'd still prefer to see you safely to your door." "Very well." She collected her payment from Forster, who counted out the coins with a flourish. "Another fine night, Miss Reed," the saloon owner said cheerfully. "The offer to sing more regularly still stands." "I'll consider it," she replied, as she always did. In truth, 3 nights a week at the saloon was all she could manage while maintaining her work at the dressmaker's shop. As they stepped into the cool night air, Nathaniel wrapped her shawl tighter around her shoulders. The streets were quiet now. Most of Jefferson's respectable citizens long since retired for the night. Only the occasional burst of laughter from the saloon broke the stillness. Adam untied his horse and led the animal beside them as they walked toward her cabin. For several minutes, neither spoke, the silence between them surprisingly comfortable despite the evening's tensions. Finally, Nathaniel broke the quiet. "Are you going to tell me who those men were?" Adam's stride didn't falter. "Men I've had dealings with in the past." "Unpleasant dealings, I gather. You could say that." He glanced sideways at her. "Does it matter?" "It might if they're likely to cause trouble." She stopped walking, forcing him to stop as well. "I've had enough trouble following me without inviting more." In the moonlight, his expression was difficult to read. "I wouldn't intentionally bring harm your way, Miss Reed." "Nathaniel," she corrected, surprising herself. A small smile touched his lips. "Nathaniel, then." He sighed, running a hand through his dark hair. "Those men work for someone I've crossed paths with before, someone who doesn't forget grudges. And what exactly do you do, Adam Sullivan, that creates such enemies? He hesitated, weighing his words. I find things and sometimes people that don't want to be found. A bounty hunter. The possibility should have alarmed her more than it did. Not exactly, more of a problem solver. He shifted his weight, the leather of his holster creaking slightly. I was hired to locate a man who disappeared with a considerable sum of money belonging to a bank in Tucson. My inquiries led me here to Jefferson. And those men work for the man I'm looking for. They've been following me, trying to discourage my search. Nathaniel absorbed this information, turning it over in her mind. So you came to Jefferson hunting a thief, and instead found yourself defending a woman the town believes to be cursed. Your judgment might be questioned, Mr. Sullivan. His laugh was unexpected, a rich sound that warmed the night air. It wouldn't be the first time. They resumed walking, the distant outline of her cabin now visible in the moonlight. What about you? What brought you to Jefferson of all places? A fresh start, she said simply. After my husband died and then the banker, I needed somewhere new, somewhere no one knew me. Yet the stories followed. People talk. Word spreads. Her voice held resignation born of experience. I thought I'd come far enough this time, but it seems there's no outrunning a reputation. They reached her cabin, the small structure dark and silent against the night sky. Adam tied his horse to the porch rail and followed Nathaniel up the steps. At the door, she turned to face him. "Thank you for the escort," she said formally. "Though I suspect it's done your standing in town no favors. I've never been particularly concerned with what others think of me." His voice had softened, and he stood close enough that she could see the flecks of gray in his blue eyes, even in the dim light. "A luxury few can afford," she murmured, "perhaps." He stepped back slightly. "May I call on you tomorrow? I find myself wanting to continue our conversation." The request was unexpected and Nathaniel hesitated. "I attend church in the morning. Alone, I imagine." She nodded, the truth of his observation striking deeper than she cared to admit. The women of Jefferson's First Baptist Church maintained a careful distance from her, their whispers following her like shadows. "I could accompany you," he offered, "if you wouldn't find it presumptuous." "It would only fuel more gossip. Let them talk." His hand brushed hers briefly, a touch so light it might have been accidental. "I've found that facing rumors head-on often takes the power out of them." Something about his confidence, his calm certainty, made her want to believe him. "Church begins at 10. I leave here at 9:30. Then I'll be here at 9:15. He smiled, a genuine expression that transformed his weather-worn face. "Good night, Nathaniel." "Good night, Adam." As she watched him ride away, Nathaniel wondered what she had set in motion by accepting his company. A man with enemies, searching for a thief, hardly the sort of association likely to improve her standing in Jefferson. And yet, for the first time in months, she felt something other than dread at the thought of the day to come. She closed the door, securing the lock before preparing for bed. Outside, an owl called into the darkness, its mournful cry echoing across the silent land. Tomorrow would bring what it would bring. For tonight, at least, she had been treated as something other than a curse, and that, small as it was, felt like the beginning of something important. The morning dawned clear and bright, sunlight streaming through Nathaniel's curtains and casting patterns across the rough-hewn floor. She rose earlier than usual, taking extra care with her appearance, pinning her honey gold hair into a neat arrangement, selecting her best Sunday dress of deep green that matched her eyes. As she fastened the last button, she caught herself in the small mirror and paused, surprised by the color in her cheeks, the brightness in her eyes. Was this anticipation she felt? How long had it been since she'd looked forward to anything beyond simple survival? True to his word, Adam arrived at 9:15, looking markedly different from the trail-worn cowboy of yesterday. He'd bathed and shaved, his dark hair neatly combed, wearing a clean shirt and his best denims beneath a black coat that had seen better days but been carefully brushed. His gun belt was conspicuously absent. "Good morning," he greeted her, hat in hand. "Hope I'm not too early." "Right on time," she replied, trying to ignore the flutter in her stomach at the admiration in his gaze. "Though I should warn you that Reverend Holcomb's sermons tend to run long. I've endured worse hardships." His smile reached his eyes, crinkling the corners. "You look lovely, if I might say so." The compliment, delivered with such straightforward sincerity, brought warmth to her cheeks. "Thank you, shall we?" They walked toward town side by side, close enough that their hands occasionally brushed, sending little jolts of awareness through Nathaniel each time. The morning was pleasant, with a gentle breeze carrying the scent of sage and distant rain. "Did you sleep well?" Adam asked, breaking the comfortable silence. "Well enough." She glanced at him. "And you, where are you staying?" "Hotel above the saloon, not the quietest accommodations, but the bed's clean." He adjusted his hat against the brightening sun. "How long have you been in Jefferson?" 4 months. "Long enough to establish myself at the dressmaker's shop, but not long enough to escape my reputation, it seems." "And before that?" Tucson briefly, then a small mining town near the border that barely had a name. "Before that, Laramie for almost a year." She looked ahead to where Jefferson's church spire rose above the other buildings. "I keep hoping each new place will be different." Adam's expression turned thoughtful. "Have you considered that running might be reinforcing the stories? People see a woman alone, moving from town to town, and they create narratives to explain it. What would you suggest instead? Staying in one place while the whispers grow into shouts, standing your ground, proving them wrong through time and consistency." His voice was gentle but firm. "A curse is only powerful if people believe in it." Before she could respond, they rounded the bend in the road and came into view of the church. Already, congregants were gathering on the steps and in the yard, dressed in their Sunday best, exchanging greetings and news of the week. The conversations faltered as Nathaniel and Adam approached, curious and suspicious gazes turning their way. Nathaniel felt the familiar tightening in her chest, the weight of judgment pressing down upon her. She nearly stopped walking, but Adam's hand came to rest lightly at the small of her back, a steadying presence. "Keep your head high," he murmured, for her ears alone. "You have as much right to be here as anyone." With his quiet support, she continued forward, nodding politely to those whose eyes she met. Most looked away quickly, but a few Mrs. Holcomb, the Reverend's wife, and young Sarah Thompson from the dressmaker's shop returned her greeting with hesitant smiles. "Miss Reed," Reverend Holcomb called as they reached the steps. A tall, thin man with kind eyes that belied his reputation for fire and brimstone sermons, he had always treated Nathaniel with distant civility. "Good to see you this morning." "Reverend," she acknowledged. "May I introduce Mr. Adam Sullivan? He's recently arrived in Jefferson." The Reverend extended his hand. "Welcome to our congregation, Mr. Sullivan, however temporary your stay may be." Adam shook the offered hand firmly. "Thank you, Reverend. I've heard good things about your sermons." Holcomb's eyebrows rose slightly, glancing between Adam and Nathaniel. "Indeed. Well, I hope today's message finds receptive soil. We'll be discussing the nature of judgment and mercy." "Sounds most appropriate," Adam replied with a hint of irony that only Nathaniel seemed to catch. They entered the church together, the whispers following them like autumn leaves blown by a persistent wind. Adam led them to a pew midway down the aisle, not hiding at the back, but not boldly claiming the front rows either. As they sat, Nathaniel was acutely aware of the empty space that immediately formed around them, other congregants choosing to crowd together rather than sit near the cursed woman and her companion. "I warned you," she whispered as the church filled. "And I chose to come anyway," he replied, his shoulder solid and warm against hers. "Besides, I'm developing a theory about your so-called curse. Oh, I'll share it with you after the service." His eyes held a glint of mischief that made him look younger, less weathered by whatever trials had marked his life. Reverend Holcomb's sermon was indeed about judgment, drawing from the Gospel of Matthew with pointed references to casting the first stone and seeing the beam in one's own eye. Throughout the hour-long discourse, Nathaniel felt the weight of stares upon her back, as if the congregation believed the message was delivered specifically for her benefit or perhaps for those who had judged her. When the final hymn had been sung and the benediction given, they waited for the crowd to thin before making their way outside. Adam nodded respectfully to several townspeople, his manner relaxed despite the coolness of their responses. "Mr. Sullivan," a voice called as they descended the church steps. Sheriff Davis approached, his badge gleaming in the midday sun. "Might I have a word?" Adam exchanged a glance with Nathaniel before answering. "Of course, Sheriff. Alone, if you don't mind." "Actually, I do mind." Adam's tone remained pleasant, but something in his stance shifted subtly. "Anything you need to say to me can be said in Miss Reed's presence." Davis frowned, his gaze flicking to Nathaniel. "Very well. I've had reports of 2 strangers in town asking questions about you. Described as troublemakers, care to explain, former associates with whom I've had a disagreement," Adam replied smoothly. "Nothing that concerns Jefferson or its citizens. I'll be the judge of that." Davis's weathered face hardened. "I don't need outside trouble in my town, Sullivan. Whatever business brought you here, I suggest you conclude it quickly." "That's my intention, Sheriff, though I'd appreciate knowing if you've noticed any new arrivals in the past month or so." A man in his 40s, well-dressed, possibly using the name Edwards or Edmonds. Davis's eyes narrowed. "You're hunting someone, looking for someone," Adam corrected, "at the request of interested parties in Tucson. You have papers to that effect." Adam reached inside his coat and produced a folded document which Davis examined carefully before handing back. "Seems in order," the sheriff conceded grudgingly. "But I'll be watching you, Sullivan. And those friends of yours show their faces again causing trouble, I'll hold you responsible. Understood?" As Davis walked away, Nathaniel turned to Adam with raised eyebrows. "You didn't mention you were operating in any official capacity. It didn't seem relevant to our previous conversations." He offered his arm. "May I walk you home? Or would you prefer to join the after-church social at Mrs. Bennett's home, given that Mrs. Bennett had been one of the most vocal about Nathaniel's cursed status? The question held a hint of challenge. "I think we've given them enough to talk about for one day," she decided, taking his arm. "Besides, I believe you were going to share a theory with me." They walked away from the church, the sun high overhead now, casting short shadows on the dusty road. Adam waited until they were beyond earshot of the lingering congregants before speaking. "I've been thinking about these deaths that supposedly follow you," he began. 3 men here in Jefferson, your husband back in Missouri, the banker. A pattern emerges, but not the one people think." "What pattern do you see?" she asked, curious despite her skepticism. "Men of a certain type, drawn to you for reasons that have nothing to do with your character and everything to do with their own weaknesses." His gaze was steady on the road ahead. "Your husband was abusive, you said. The banker likely saw a vulnerable widow he could manipulate. Here in Jefferson, I'd wager the men who died were similarly flawed, looking for something to possess rather than someone to know. Nathaniel considered his words. So your theory is that I attract a particular kind of man? My theory is that a beautiful, independent woman will always attract men with something to prove to themselves or others, and such men often make enemies easily. He glanced at her. The curse isn't you, Nathaniel. It's the type of attention you unwittingly draw. They reached her cabin, but rather than going inside, Nathaniel moved to the porch steps and sat, arranging her skirts around her. After a moment's hesitation, Adam joined her, their shoulders almost touching. An interesting theory, she said finally. But it doesn't explain why the town blames me rather than the men involved. Doesn't it? His smile held no humor. It's easier to blame the stranger, the outsider, especially a woman who doesn't fit neatly into their expectations. You don't have family here, don't have roots. You're beautiful in a way that makes wives nervous and men reckless. You work for your living instead of seeking a husband's protection. Every aspect of your existence challenges their comfortable assumptions. His assessment was so accurate, so plainly stated, that Nathaniel found herself momentarily speechless. No one had ever articulated her situation with such clarity before. So what's the solution? She asked eventually. If the problem is inherent to who I am, how do I escape it? Adam turned toward her, his expression serious. You don't escape it. You face it. You build a life so solid, so unimpeachable that even the most determined gossip can't find purchase. His hand covered hers where it rested on the rough wood of the step. And perhaps you consider being selective about the company you keep. The warmth of his touch traveled up her arm, settling somewhere in the region of her heart. Are you suggesting I should avoid your company, Mr. Sullivan? His laugh was quiet but genuine. Not at all. I'm suggesting that I might be a different sort of man than those who have crossed your path before. And what sort is that? The sort who sees beyond beauty to the strength beneath it. His voice had dropped lower, intimate, despite the openness of their surroundings. The sort who recognizes courage when faced with unfair judgment. The sort who doesn't need to possess something to appreciate its value. Nathaniel was acutely aware of his proximity, of the sincerity in his storm-gray eyes. It had been so long since anyone had looked at her with something other than suspicion or lust that she hardly knew how to respond. You hardly know me, she said finally. I'm a good judge of character. His thumb traced a small circle on the back of her hand. It comes with the territory in my line of work. And what does your character assessment tell you about me? That you're a survivor, that you've faced more than your share of hardship without letting it break you. His gaze held her steadily. That you deserve better than what life has handed you so far. Something warm unfurled in Nathaniel's chest, hope, perhaps, or the dangerous beginnings of trust. Before she could respond, the sound of approaching hoofbeats drew their attention to the road. A rider approached at a gallop, dust rising behind him. Young Billy Thompson, the dressmaker's son, his face flushed with exertion. Miss Reed, he called, reining his horse to a stop before her cabin. Ma sent me to find you. There's trouble in town. Nathaniel rose quickly. What kind of trouble, Billy? Those men from the saloon last night, they're back, and they're looking for him. He pointed at Adam. They've got guns, and they're drinking heavy at the Silver Dollar. Sheriff Davis sent me to warn you both to stay clear of town. Adam was on his feet immediately, his relaxed demeanor vanishing. Did they say what they wanted? Billy shook his head. Just that they had business with you that couldn't wait. One of 'em tall fellow with a scar, he said if you didn't come to them, they'd come find you. The boy glanced nervously at Nathaniel. He mentioned Miss Reed too, said something about curses being contagious. Adam's expression hardened. "Billy, ride back and tell the sheriff I'll be there shortly. Tell him to keep people away from the saloon if he can." "Yes, sir." Billy wheeled his horse around, casting one last worried look at Nathaniel before galloping back toward town. "You're not actually going to meet them," Nathaniel said, alarm evident in her voice. Adam was already moving toward the cabin door. "I need my gun belt. It's in my saddlebags." "Adam, wait," she caught his arm. "This is exactly what I was afraid of, more violence following in my wake." He turned to her, his expression softening slightly. "This has nothing to do with you, Nathaniel. These men were after me long before I met you, but they're using me to draw you out. And I won't let them." He gently disengaged from her grip. "Please, I need my weapon." With reluctance, she led him inside the cabin where he'd left his saddlebags the night before. As he strapped on his gun belt, checking the revolver with practiced efficiency, Nathaniel watched with growing apprehension. "At least tell me what this is really about," she insisted. "Who are these men, and why are they so determined to find you?" Adam sighed, his movements slowing. "The man I'm looking for, the thief from Tucson, is named James Blackwell. He stole $50,000 from the Territorial Bank 3 months ago. Those men work for him, and your interest in finding him is professional. I was hired by the bank to recover their money." He adjusted his holster, not meeting her eyes. "There's more to it than that," she said, certain now. "I've become familiar with the sound of partial truths, Adam." He was silent for a long moment then. "Blackwell killed my brother 2 years ago in Kansas City. The bank job is legitimate, but finding him, that's personal." The admission hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. "So this is about revenge," Nathaniel said quietly. "Justice," Adam corrected, though without conviction. "The law never caught up with him for Thomas's murder. And when you find him, I'll bring him back to Tucson to face charges for the theft." His eyes met hers, holding secrets he wasn't ready to share. "That's all I'm contracted to do." Nathaniel wasn't sure she believed him, but the urgency of the situation left little time for further questioning. "If you insist on going into town, I'm coming with you." "Absolutely not." His refusal was immediate. "These men are dangerous, Nathaniel." "So is the situation you're creating," she countered. "If there's shooting in Jefferson, who do you think they'll blame? The stranger passing through, or the woman they already believe brings death wherever she goes?" Understanding dawned in his expression. "You're worried about the aftermath." "I have to live here after you're gone, Adam." The words came out more plaintively than she'd intended. "If there's a chance I can help prevent bloodshed, I need to try." He studied her for a long moment, conflict evident in his features. Finally, he nodded. "Stay behind me at all times. If I tell you to run, you run. No arguments." Agreed. They left the cabin together, Adam untying his horse and mounting in one fluid motion. He extended his hand down to her. "It'll be faster this way." With only a moment's hesitation, Nathaniel took his hand and allowed him to pull her up behind him, settling sideways on the horse's back, her arms encircling his waist for stability. The intimacy of the position, her chest pressed against his back, her face close to his neck, might have been embarrassing in other circumstances, but fear for what lay ahead overshadowed such concerns. Adam urged the horse into a canter, taking the road toward Jefferson at a pace that spoke of urgency without panic. As they rode, Nathaniel could feel the tension in his body, the readiness for whatever confrontation awaited them in town. "These men," she said, her mouth close to his ear to be heard over the hoofbeats, "how far will they go?" "They're not known for restraint," he replied grimly. "But they're not fools either. A shootout in a crowded town brings too much attention." "Then what do they want?" "Information. They want to know how close I am to finding Blackwell." The horse slowed as they approached the outskirts of Jefferson. "And they want to scare me off. Will it work?" She could see the church steeple now, the familiar buildings of Main Street coming into view. Adam's laugh was short and humorless. "What do you think?" As they reached the edge of town, the usual Sunday quiet had been replaced by an unusual stillness, the kind that spoke of tension rather than peace. Few people were visible on the streets, those who were hurried along with worried glances toward the Silver Dollar Saloon. Sheriff Davis waited for them outside his office, rifle in hand. His expression darkened when he saw Nathaniel behind Adam. "What in blazes is she doing here?" he demanded as Adam reined the horse to a stop. "My choice, Sheriff," Nathaniel answered before Adam could speak. "What's the situation?" Davis frowned but answered. "Two men, armed and drinking heavily. Forster's cleared out most of the patrons, but they've got him and Morris the bartender inside. No shots fired yet, but they're making threats." Adam dismounted, then helped Nathaniel down. "What kind of threats?" "Said they'd start shooting if you didn't show by noon." Davis glanced at the sun high overhead, "which gives us about 10 minutes. "Let me talk to them," Adam said, his hand resting on the butt of his revolver. "This is between us, not Jefferson, and if talking doesn't work," Davis's skepticism was clear, "then we have a problem." Adam turned to Nathaniel. "Stay here with the sheriff. Adam, please." The single word held more emotion than anything he'd said previously. "I need to know you're safe." Something in his expression concerned, yes, but also a deeper feeling she dared not name made her nod in agreement. "Be careful." With a final look that seemed to memorize her face, Adam turned and walked toward the saloon, his stride purposeful but unhurried. Sheriff Davis moved to stand beside Nathaniel, his rifle ready. "That man's walking into trouble for you," he remarked, watching Adam's progress down the street. Nathaniel shook her head. "Not for me. This started long before he came to Jefferson. Maybe so, but he's got extra reason to walk out alive now." Davis gave her a sidelong glance. Never seen a man look at a woman quite that way before heading into danger. Before she could respond to this unexpected observation, Adam reached the saloon's swinging doors and paused, adjusting his hat before pushing them open and disappearing inside. The silence that followed was excruciating. Nathaniel found herself holding her breath, straining to hear any sound from the saloon. Seconds stretched into minutes with agonizing slowness. "Should we move closer?" she asked finally, unable to bear the waiting. Davis shook his head. "Give him time to talk, that's what he wanted." Another minute passed, then two. Just as Nathaniel was about to insist on action, the saloon doors swung open. Adam emerged, followed by Edwin Forster and Morris the bartender. The two older men hurried away down the boardwalk, relief evident in their hasty departure. Adam remained at the entrance, saying something to someone still inside. Then he stepped back into the street, his posture alert but not defensive. The scarred man from the previous night appeared in the doorway, followed by his bearded companion. They moved into the street as well, facing Adam from about 20 paces away. "What's happening?" Nathaniel whispered. "Don't know," Davis replied, raising his rifle slightly, "but I don't like it." The men appeared to be talking, though their voices didn't carry to where Nathaniel and the sheriff stood. The scarred man gestured emphatically, pointing toward the north. Adam shook his head, his response measured but firm. Suddenly, the bearded man's hand dropped to his holster. "Gun!" Davis shouted, raising his rifle. Everything happened in a blur of motion. The bearded man drew, but Adam was faster, his revolver clearing leather in a smooth arc that ended with a deafening report. The bearded man staggered backward, clutching his shoulder. The scarred man went for his weapon, and another shot rang out, Adam's second bullet finding its mark in the man's thigh. Both attackers were down but alive, their weapons fallen to the dusty street. Adam remained standing, his gun still trained on them, smoke curling from the barrel. Sheriff Davis was running forward now, Nathaniel close behind despite his shouted order to stay put. By the time they reached the scene, Adam had kicked the fallen guns away and was standing over the wounded men, his expression grim. "You didn't kill them," Davis observed, sounding almost surprised. "Wasn't necessary." Adam holstered his weapon. "They'll live to face charges for threatening citizens of Jefferson." The scarred man glared up at Adam, blood seeping through the fingers pressed to his thigh. "Blackwell will hear about this, Sullivan. He'll know you're close. Count on it," Adam replied coldly. "Tell him Thomas Sullivan's brother sends his regards." Davis signaled to several men who had cautiously emerged onto the street. "Get Doc Pearson. These two need patching up before they see the inside of my jail." As the wounded men were attended to, Nathaniel approached Adam, noting the tightness around his eyes, the controlled way he held himself. "Are you hurt?" she asked quietly. He shook his head. "No, but this complicates things." "How so?" "Blackwell will know I'm in Jefferson now. He'll either run or come to finish this himself." His gaze swept the gathering crowd, as if expecting to find his quarry among them. "Mr. Sullivan," Sheriff Davis interrupted, returning from giving instructions to his deputies. "I need your statement about what happened here." "Of course." Adam turned to Nathaniel. "Will you wait for me?" She nodded, suddenly aware of the townspeople watching them with expressions ranging from curiosity to outright suspicion. More whispers, more rumors to add to those already surrounding her. As Adam walked away with the sheriff, Edwin Forster approached Nathaniel, his usual bluster subdued by the morning's events. "Quite a man you found there, Miss Reed," he commented, watching Adam's retreating form. "Quick with that gun, but controlled. Don't see that combination often." "He's not my man, Mr. Forster," she replied automatically. Forster's bushy eyebrows rose. "No, could have fooled me, and half the town, I'd wager." He patted her arm awkwardly. "For what it's worth, those fellows were asking all manner of questions about you before Sullivan showed up. Nasty insinuations. Your cowboy shut that down right quick." "What do you mean?" Made it clear that disrespecting you would be the last mistake they made in his presence. Forster shook his head admiringly. Never seen two hard cases back down so quick, at least until they decided to try their luck with their guns. This revelation sent an unexpected warmth through Nathaniel. Adam had defended her reputation to men who had come to threaten him, men he clearly feared and hated for their connection to his brother's killer. "Thank you for telling me," she said softly. Forster nodded, then moved away to inspect the damage to his saloon, leaving Nathaniel standing alone in the street, aware of the stares but, for once, not feeling their usual weight. Something had changed not just in how she felt about Adam Sullivan, but in how she perceived her place in Jefferson. For the first time in longer than she could remember, Nathaniel Reed stood in public view without shame or fear, waiting for a man who had stood up for her not because of what she could offer him, but because of who she was. It was a feeling worth holding on to, however long it might last. Adam's discussion with Sheriff Davis took the better part of an hour, during which Nathaniel waited on a bench outside the jail office, ignoring the curious glances of passers-by. When he finally emerged, his expression was troubled. "Everything all right?" she asked as he approached. "For now." He offered his hand to help her rise. "Davis is holding them on charges of threatening citizens and attempted murder. They'll face a judge when the circuit court comes through next month. And Blackwell, no sign of him yet." Adam's gaze swept the street with practiced vigilance. "But he'll know what happened here within days, if not hours. He has ways of getting information." They walked toward where his horse waited, Nathaniel acutely aware of the distance Adam maintained between them, not coldness, but a deliberate space, as if he feared contaminating her with his troubles. "You're leaving," she said, not a question but a realization. "I have to." He stopped, turning to face her. These men were just a warning. If Blackwell comes himself, it won't be a clean confrontation like today. He doesn't operate that way. And you can't let that danger touch Jefferson. Again, not a question. Adam's expression softened. "I can't let it touch you." The simple statement, delivered without drama or flourish, struck Nathaniel more powerfully than any grand declaration might have. For a man like Adam, protection was not a matter of possession but of principle. "When will you go?" "Tomorrow, at first light." His hand rose as if to touch her face, then fell back to his side. "I need to draw them away from here. Follow rumors of Blackwell's whereabouts toward Prescott." "But you don't believe those rumors," she guessed, reading the truth in his eyes. A rueful smile touched his lips. "You're becoming quite adept at seeing through me, Nathaniel Reed. Perhaps I recognize the necessity of half-truths." She held his gaze steadily. "You believe Blackwell is here in Jefferson, don't you?" Adam glanced around before answering, his voice dropping lower. "I believe he's nearby. Watching. Possibly even orchestrated today's confrontation to gauge my reactions." "Then why leave?" "To make him think he's won, to make him careless." Adam took her elbow, guiding her toward a quieter side street, away from curious ears. "If I stay, he'll remain hidden, using others to do his dirty work. If I appear to give up, move on. He might reveal himself," she finished. "A clever strategy, but dangerous. No more dangerous than staying and waiting for him to make another move, one that might involve innocent people." His meaning was clear. The innocent people he most feared for included her. They reached a small alley between the general store and the gunsmith shop, a private space away from the town's busy main street. Here, sheltered from view, Adam finally allowed himself to touch her, his hand coming to rest against her cheek. "I never meant to bring this trouble to your door, Nathaniel. You have enough of your own without adding mine to the burden." She leaned slightly into his touch, her eyes closing briefly. "Strange, but your troubles seem to have overshadowed mine, at least temporarily. I haven't heard anyone whispering about curses since the shooting." "Small comfort," he murmured, his thumb tracing the line of her cheekbone. "They'll remember soon enough. Perhaps." She opened her eyes, meeting his gaze directly. "Or perhaps they'll remember that the cursed woman stood beside the sheriff while a stranger defended the town. Perceptions can change, Adam." "Is that what I did? Defended the town?" His smile held a trace of irony. "I was defending myself. And you. Motivations matter less than actions in the court of public opinion." She covered his hand with her own where it rested against her face. "You may have done more to change my standing in Jefferson than you realize." The look that crossed his face, then a mixture of hope and regret, made Nathaniel's heart constrict with an emotion she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. This man, this complex, dangerous, honorable man, had walked into her life barely 24 hours ago and somehow shifted everything. "Come with me," he said suddenly, the words seeming to surprise even him. "What, when I leave tomorrow? Come with me." His other hand came up, framing her face between his palms. "We could head north, away from Blackwell's likely paths. Start somewhere new, somewhere no one knows either of us." The offer stole her breath. How long had she dreamed of exactly this, a fresh start with someone who saw her for who she truly was? And yet, "You can't abandon your search for Blackwell," she said softly. "Not after what he did to your brother." Pain flickered across his features. "I could. For you I could." "No." She shook her head gently within his hands. "You couldn't live with yourself, Adam. That ghost would follow us wherever we went." And you can't leave Jefferson, he concluded, understanding in his eyes. Not like this, not running again. Not when, for the first time, I might actually have a chance to build something lasting. The admission cost her, revealed a hope she'd barely acknowledged to herself. You were right before running only reinforces the stories. I need to stay to prove them wrong. Adam's forehead came to rest against hers, their breath mingling in the narrow space between them. I'll come back, he promised. When it's finished with Blackwell, one way or another, I'll come back to you. If that's what you still want, she whispered, unable to fully believe in promises that stretched into an uncertain future. It's what I want now. It will be what I want then. His voice carried absolute conviction. I've spent 2 years chasing a ghost, Nathaniel, meeting you. It's the first time I've thought about what might come after. The emotion those words stirred was too powerful to resist. Nathaniel closed the small distance between them, pressing her lips to his in a kiss that began tentatively but quickly deepened into something more desperate, more consuming. His arms encircled her, drawing her against the solid warmth of his body as if he could imprint the feeling of her upon his memory. When they finally separated, both breathless, the world around them seemed to have receded, leaving only this moment, this connection. I should take you home, Adam said, his voice rough with restrained emotion. Before I forget all my noble intentions. Nathaniel nodded, though everything within her rebelled at the thought of parting, even temporarily. Will you stay? Tonight, I mean, at my cabin. The question hung between them, its implications clear. If I stay tonight, he said carefully, leaving tomorrow becomes nearly impossible. I know. Her decision was made, consequences be damned. Stay anyway. The ride back to her cabin passed in charged silence, both of them acutely aware of what awaited them, of the boundaries about to be crossed. As Jefferson fell behind them and the isolated cabin came into view, Nathaniel felt a curious mixture of nervousness and certainty, nervous about the vulnerability she was choosing to embrace, certain that Adam Sullivan was unlike any man she had known before. Inside, the simplicity of her home seemed transformed by their shared awareness. Adam moved around the small space with deliberate care, removing his hat and coat, his gun belt placed carefully on a side table within reach, a man never fully at ease, even in moments of intimacy. Are you certain? He asked as she lit the lamps against the gathering dusk. About this, about me. Nathaniel turned to face him, her decision evident in her steady gaze. I've spent years being careful, Adam, protecting myself from hurt, from attachment. It hasn't brought me happiness or safety, only isolation. She moved toward him slowly. For once, I want to choose something because it feels right, not because it's safe. And this feels right. His hands remained at his sides, allowing her to set the pace, the boundaries. You feel right. She reached up, her fingers tracing the line of his jaw, the slight roughness of stubble against her skin. Whatever happens tomorrow or after, tonight is ours. His restraint broke then, arms encircling her waist and drawing her against him as his mouth found hers with an urgency that matched her own. This kiss was different from the one they'd shared in town, deeper, hungrier, without the constraints of public propriety. Nathaniel surrendered to it completely, her hands moving to his shoulders, his back, learning the contours of him through the fabric of his shirt. When his lips left hers to trail along her jaw, her neck, she gasped at the unfamiliar sensations coursing through her. Nathaniel, he murmured against her skin, her name a prayer on his lips. Tell me if you want me to stop at any point. I don't want you to stop, she whispered, fingers tangling in his dark hair. I want you, Adam, all of you. Those words released something in him, not violence, never that, but a controlled passion that swept them both toward the small bedroom at the back of the cabin. There, in the soft glow of lamplight, They undressed each other with reverent hands, each newly revealed expanse of skin explored with touches and kisses. When they came together on her narrow bed, the joining of their bodies felt like an inevitability, a culmination rather than a beginning. Adam moved with careful restraint despite the desire evident in his eyes, mindful of her comfort, her pleasure. Nathaniel, for her part, discovered aspects of herself long dormant or never known the capacity for abandonment, for joy untempered by fear. Afterward, as they lay tangled in sheets in each other, Adam's fingers traced patterns on her bare shoulder, his expression thoughtful in the fading light. "What are you thinking?" she asked, her head pillowed on his chest, the steady beat of his heart beneath her ear. "That I've never known peace like this," he admitted quietly. "Even before Thomas died, before I started hunting Blackwell, I don't think I ever felt this still inside." She understood what he meant, the quieting of the restless spirit, the momentary cessation of vigilance that marked them both in different ways. "Will you tell me about him? Your brother?" Adam was silent for so long that Nathaniel thought he might not answer. When he did, his voice carried the weight of memories long held close. "Thomas was everything I'm not: steady, thoughtful, patient. He had a way with people that I never mastered. Could talk a bulldog off a meat wagon, our father used to say." A smile touched his lips at the recollection. "He was a banker in Kansas City, respectable, building a life with a woman he loved. Then Blackwell came to town." Nathaniel remained still, offering silent support as the story unfolded. "James Blackwell presents himself as a businessman, a gentleman, gains people's trust, their confidence. He used that to orchestrate a robbery at Thomas's bank, got inside information, security details." Adam's arm tightened around her shoulders. "Something went wrong during the robbery. A guard recognized one of Blackwell's men. Shooting started. Thomas tried to protect a young teller. Took a bullet meant for her." "I'm sorry," Nathaniel whispered, her hand finding his where it rested on his stomach. "Blackwell vanished afterward. The law never connected him directly to the robbery. He's careful that way, works through others, maintains his respectability." Bitterness edged his voice. "I was a Texas Ranger then. Used every resource I had to track him, but he always stayed one step ahead. Finally resigned my position when it became clear I couldn't pursue him officially, and you've been hunting him ever since. 2 years." He sighed, the sound weary with the weight of obsession. "Followed his trail across 4 territories. He's clever, changes names, appearances, but he can't change his habits, likes fine things, cultivates influential friends, always has an eye for the next score." "And you believe he's here?" "In Jefferson." Adam's fingers continued their idle patterns on her skin. "Not in town itself, but nearby. The bank in Tucson was his latest target, largest haul yet. He needs somewhere quiet to lie low, wait for attention to fade. The stagecoach only comes through Jefferson twice a week," Nathaniel mused. "And we're far from any major settlements. It would be a good place to disappear." "Exactly. Especially if he's established himself under another name, built a respectable front." Adam shifted slightly, looking down at her. "Enough about Blackwell. Tell me something about you, something happy." The request caught her off guard. Her life had been defined by its hardships for so long that happy memories seemed distant, faded like old photographs. "My father taught me to sing," she said finally, the recollection warming her. "He played fiddle at local gatherings back in Missouri. Used to put me on his shoulders when I was small, let me sing while he played. Said my mother had the voice of an angel and I'd inherited it." He was right about that. Adam's hand moved to stroke her hair. "What else?" Encouraged, Nathaniel shared fragments of her life before the hardship, learning to sew from her grandmother, riding bareback through summer fields, the taste of fresh blackberries picked warm from the sun. Small joys, but precious in their simplicity. As night deepened around the cabin, they talked and loved by turns, each sensing the limited time available to them, each memorizing the other in their own way. When sleep finally claimed Nathaniel, it was with her head on Adam's shoulder, his arm secure around her waist, as if even unconscious he intended to protect her. She dreamed of open roads and possibilities, of a future where the past no longer defined her every step. Morning arrived too soon, pale light filtering through the cabin's small windows. Nathaniel woke to find Adam already dressed, standing by the bedroom window, his expression distant as he gazed toward the mountains. "You're leaving," she said, sitting up and drawing the sheet around her. He turned, his face softening at the sight of her. Not yet, but soon. The reality of their situation settled over them again, his unfinished quest, her determination to stand her ground in Jefferson. For a moment, Nathaniel allowed herself to imagine a different choice riding away with him, starting fresh somewhere new. But that would mean running again, and somehow, Adam had helped her find the courage to stop running. She rose, wrapping the sheet around herself, and moved to stand before him. "Promise me something." "Anything within my power," he replied without hesitation. "Be careful. Don't let vengeance blind you to danger." Her hand came to rest against his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart. "I want you to come back, Adam, in one piece." He covered her hand with his own. "I promise to do everything in my power to return to you." His other hand lifted to brush a strand of honey gold hair from her face. "And I promise that when I do, it will be with this chapter of my life closed for good. No more hunting, no more vengeance. What will you do instead?" She asked softly. A smile touched his lips. "Whatever honest work I can find, preferably near a certain dressmaker with a voice like an angel." The future he painted with those simple words was so tantalizing, so full of ordinary happiness, that Nathaniel felt tears spring to her eyes. "I'll hold you to that, Adam Sullivan." "I'm counting on it." They shared a breakfast of coffee and the bread Nathaniel had baked 2 days earlier, a lifetime ago, it seemed now. Neither spoke much, but the silence between them was comfortable, filled with understanding rather than awkwardness. As the sun rose higher, the moment of parting could no longer be delayed. Adam gathered his few belongings, strapped on his gun belt, and stood at the cabin door, hat in hand. "I won't say goodbye," he told her, his voice rough with emotion. "Just until we meet again." "Until then," she agreed, fighting to keep her own voice steady. Their final kiss was gentle, almost reverent, a promise rather than a farewell. Then he was gone, mounting his horse with fluid grace, casting one last look at her before riding toward the road that would take him away from Jefferson. Nathaniel watched until he disappeared from sight, the dust from his horse's hooves the only evidence he had been there at all. Only then did she allow the tears to fall, not from sadness alone, but from the complicated mixture of emotions that accompanied loving a man with unfinished business. Whatever came next, she knew with bone-deep certainty that Adam Sullivan had changed her life, had helped her find the courage to stand and fight rather than flee. Whether he returned in days or weeks or never, she would face Jefferson with her head high, determined to build a life worthy of the faith he'd shown in her. The sun climbed higher in the Arizona sky, promising another hot day in the territory. Nathaniel dried her tears, changed into a simple work dress, and began preparing for the week ahead. Life continued with or without Adam Sullivan. For the first time in years, she intended to embrace it fully, whatever it might bring. The weeks that followed Adam's departure brought unexpected changes to Nathaniel's life in Jefferson. The shooting at the Silver Dollar Saloon had indeed shifted perceptions in subtle ways. While some still whispered about curses when she passed, Others, particularly those who had witnessed Adam's defense of the town, greeted her with cautious nods or brief words of acknowledgement. At the dressmaker's shop, Sarah Thompson began including Nathaniel in conversations during their work hours, eventually revealing that her younger brother Billy had developed quite the admiration for Miss Reed's cowboy friend. This simple human connection, after months of isolation, felt like rain after drought. Edwin Forster, never one to miss an opportunity, convinced Nathaniel to increase her singing performances to 4 nights a week, citing increased business whenever she performed. The extra income allowed her to purchase new fabric for dresses and even commission small improvements to her rented cabin. Each day, she scanned the horizon for a familiar figure on horseback. Each night, she fell asleep remembering Adam's touch, his voice, his promises. A letter arrived 3 weeks after his departure, brief but reassuring, sent from Prescott with no return address. He was well, he wrote. The search continued. He thought of her daily. She kept the letter beneath her pillow, a tangible reminder that their connection had been real, not simply a dream born of loneliness. 6 weeks after Adam rode away from Jefferson, Nathaniel returned from the dressmaker's shop to find Sheriff Davis waiting on her porch, his expression grave. "Evening, Miss Reed," he greeted her, rising from the chair. "Need to speak with you if you have a moment." Her heart stuttered with fear. "Is it Adam? Has something happened?" Davis's eyebrows rose slightly at her use of Sullivan's first name, but he shook his head. "Not about Sullivan, no. Though that is related in a way. I don't understand. May I come in? This isn't a conversation for all to hear." Nathaniel led him inside, setting down her sewing basket and offering coffee, which Davis declined. "There's been a development," he said, once they were seated at her small table. "Regarding those men who caused trouble at the saloon." "They've escaped," alarm colored her voice. "No, nothing like that. They're still locked up tight, awaiting the circuit judge." Davis removed his hat, setting it on the table. "But one of them, the bearded fellow, name's Wilson, has decided to talk. Seems he's hoping for leniency when the judge arrives." "Talk about what?" "About why they were really in Jefferson." Davis leaned forward slightly. "And about the man they work for, James Blackwell." Hearing the name spoken aloud sent a chill through Nathaniel. "What did he say?" "That Blackwell's been living less than 20 miles from Jefferson for the past 2 months, under the name Edwards." Davis watched her reaction carefully. "At the Circle M Ranch." "The Circle M." "Owned by Martin Matthews, one of Jefferson's most respected citizens, a wealthy widower who had arrived in the spring, purchased the struggling ranch from old Sam Becker, and quickly established himself as a generous, civic-minded neighbor. Matthews is Blackwell." Nathaniel whispered, the implications cascading through her mind. "But he's been in church every Sunday. He donated money for the schoolhouse roof." "Perfect cover, wouldn't you say? Respectable businessman, generous neighbor." Davis's mouth twisted. "Wilson says that's Blackwell's pattern. Establish himself somewhere quiet, build goodwill, all while planning his next job. The money from the Tucson Bank is supposedly hidden at the ranch." "Does Adam Sullivan know?" "That's partly why I'm here." Davis sighed. "Wilson claims their orders were to drive Sullivan away from Jefferson, make him think Blackwell had moved on to Prescott. Seems it worked." "But now you know the truth." Nathaniel's thoughts raced. "You'll arrest Matthews Blackwell." Davis's hesitation was answer enough. "It's not that simple. I need more than a prisoner's word to arrest a man like Matthews. He's got influence, friends in the territorial government." "Then why tell me this?" "Because Sullivan deserves to know his brother's killer is within reach." Davis met her gaze directly. "And because I think you might know how to contact him." The sheriff's assumption surprised her, but she nodded slowly. "I received a letter from Prescott. There was no return address, but I could write to the general delivery office there. Do it, tonight. Davis replaced his hat. Tell him what I've told you, but make it clear that I need evidence before I can move against Matthews. Something solid linking him to Blackwell's identity or the Tucson robbery. You believe Sullivan can find such evidence? I believe he's spent 2 years learning everything there is to know about James Blackwell. If anyone can connect Matthews to that name, it's him. Davis rose to leave. In the meantime, I'd advise caution, Miss Reed. Don't change your routines. Don't give any indication you know Matthews is anything other than who he claims to be. You think I might be in danger. I think Matthews has tolerated your presence in Jefferson because you pose no threat to him. If that changes. Davis let the implication hang in the air. Be careful who you trust with this information. Walls have ears in small towns. After the sheriff departed, Nathaniel sat at her table for a long while, absorbing the revelations. The man Adam had hunted across 4 territories had been here in Jefferson all along. Had likely been in the same church services she'd attended, perhaps even tipped his hat to her on the street. The irony was almost too much to bear. With determined hands, she found paper and pen, composing a careful letter to Adam that conveyed the essential information without explicitly naming Blackwell or Matthews, in case the correspondence was intercepted. She sealed it with wax, then prepared to take it to the post office immediately, knowing the eastbound stage would depart in the morning. As she walked toward town in the fading light, Nathaniel's mind whirled with implications and possibilities. If Adam received her letter, he would return to Jefferson perhaps within days. The confrontation he had sought for 2 years would finally occur. And then what? Would justice be served, or would more violence follow? Would Adam find peace in vengeance, or would it consume him? And when the dust settled, would there still be a place for her in his life? These questions haunted her as she handed over the letter, paid the postage, and watched it disappear into the mail pouch bound for Prescott. What's done is done, she thought as she walked home through the gathering darkness. All she could do now was wait and hope, and prepare for whatever storm might come. The next 4 days passed with excruciating slowness. Nathaniel maintained her usual routine's work at the dressmaker's shop during the day, singing at the saloon 4 evenings a week while watching for any sign of Adam's return. Each rider approaching from the east drew her attention. Each unfamiliar face in town sparked momentary hope. On the 5th day, as she worked on a wedding dress for the banker's daughter, Sarah Thompson leaned close during a quiet moment in the shop. "Did you hear about Mr. Matthews?" she whispered. Nathaniel's fingers stilled on the delicate lace she was attaching to the bodice. "What about him?" "He's hosting a celebration at the Circle M this Saturday. Invited half the town." Sarah's eyes gleamed with excitement. "Says it's to mark his successful first cattle sale, but Mary Jenkins at the hotel says he's announcing his engagement." Engagement? To whom? Nathaniel struggled to keep her voice casual while her mind raced. If Blackwell was planning to marry, it suggested he intended to remain in Jefferson long-term or was preparing another elaborate cover for his eventual disappearance. That's the mystery. No one knows. Sarah giggled. "Some say he's been corresponding with a widow from San Francisco. Others think it might be Mrs. Peterson from the boarding house. She's been sweet on him since he arrived." "Interesting," Nathaniel murmured, forcing herself to resume her stitching. "Will you attend?" "Oh, yes. Father says it's an important social occasion." Sarah tilted her head curiously. "Were you invited? I know you've been." "Well, people haven't always been kind." "I haven't received an invitation," Nathaniel replied truthfully, unsurprised. Even with the slight warming of attitudes toward her, She was hardly included in Jefferson's social circles. Well, I think that's a shame. You sing so beautifully the celebration would be improved by your voice. Sarah's artless kindness was a balm to Nathaniel's troubled thoughts. Thank you, Sarah. That's very sweet of you to say. The conversation moved on to details of the wedding dress, but Nathaniel's mind remained fixed on this new development. A celebration at the Circle M meant many of Jefferson's citizens would be gathered in one place away from town, on Blackwell's territory. The timing seemed significant, though she couldn't determine why. That evening, as she walked to the saloon for her performance, Nathaniel noticed unusual activity around the sheriff's office. Deputies coming and going, speaking in low voices. Sheriff Davis himself stood on the boardwalk, deep in conversation with the telegraph operator. Something was happening. Her performance that night was mechanical, her thoughts elsewhere as she sang the familiar songs. Between sets, Edwin Forster approached her table, his expression unusually serious. "Everything all right, Nate? You seem distracted tonight." "Just tired, Mr. Forster. Nothing to worry about." He nodded, though his eyes remained concerned. "Heard anything from that friend of yours, Sullivan?" The question, coming unexpectedly, made her tense. "No. Why do you ask?" Forster shrugged, elaborately casual. "No reason. Just wondered if he might return for Matthews's big to-do this weekend. Seems like the sort of event that draws folks back to town." The comment was odd enough that Nathaniel studied Forster more closely, noting the way his eyes didn't quite meet hers, the slight perspiration on his forehead despite the cool evening. "Mr. Forster, is there something you're not telling me?" He glanced around the saloon before leaning closer. "Just, if Sullivan does return, tell him to watch himself. Matthews has been asking questions about him, specific questions." Before she could press for more information, Forster was called away to settle a dispute at the bar, leaving Nathaniel with a growing sense of unease. Blackwell was asking about Adam. The pieces were shifting on the board, but she couldn't see the full pattern yet. After her final song, Nathaniel declined Forster's offer of an escort home, preferring the solitude to gather her thoughts. The night was clear, stars scattered like diamond dust across the velvet sky. The walk to her cabin usually took 15 minutes at a leisurely pace. She had gone perhaps halfway when she became aware of hoofbeats behind her, a single rider, approaching slowly. Nathaniel tensed, preparing to step aside for the stranger to pass, her hand slipping into her pocket where she carried a small derringer for protection. "Miss Reed," a cultured voice called. "A moment of your time, if you please." She turned slowly to face Martin Matthews. James Blackwell mounted on a handsome bay gelding, his figure silhouetted against the distant lights of Jefferson. He was a striking man in his 40s, with silver threading his dark hair and a neatly trimmed beard that lent him an air of distinction. "Mr. Matthews," she acknowledged, her heart racing despite her outwardly calm demeanor. "It's rather late for social calls." He dismounted with easy grace, leading his horse closer. "I apologize for the hour, but I've just returned from business in Tucson and happened to hear your lovely singing as I passed the saloon. When I saw you walking alone, I thought to offer my escort." Every instinct warned Nathaniel to be cautious. This man had killed Adam's brother, had orchestrated robberies across multiple territories. Yet here he stood, the picture of gentility and concern. "That's very kind, but I'm nearly home," she replied. "And I'm quite accustomed to walking these roads alone." "Yes, I've heard that independence is something of a hallmark of yours." His smile didn't reach his eyes, along with other, notable qualities. "If you're referring to the rumors about me, Mr. Matthews, I assure you they're greatly exaggerated." "Oh, I never put much stock in small-town gossip." He moved slightly closer, still leading his horse. I prefer to form my own impressions of people. Speaking of which, I understand you formed quite a connection with a gentleman who passed through Jefferson some weeks ago. Sullivan, I believe, was his name. The direct mention of Adam sent a chill through Nathaniel, but she kept her expression neutral. Mr. Sullivan was kind enough to escort me to church during his brief stay. Hardly what I'd call a connection. Matthews's laugh was soft and entirely without humor. Come now, Miss Reed, we're both adults. The entire town knows he spent his last night in Jefferson at your cabin. No judgment from me. I assure you I'm a modern man with modern views. Then, as a modern man, you'll understand that my personal affairs are precisely that personal. Nathaniel took a step backward, maintaining distance between them. Now, if you'll excuse me, it's late, and I have work in the morning. She turned to continue walking, but Matthews's next words stopped her cold. He won't find what he's looking for in Prescott, you know. A wild goose chase, I'm afraid. Such a waste of a determined man's talents. Slowly, Nathaniel faced him again. All pretense of casual conversation had vanished from Matthews's demeanor, replaced by calculating assessment. I don't know what you're talking about, she said carefully. I think you do. He studied her with the dispassionate interest of a scientist observing a specimen. Adam Sullivan has been hunting me for a very long time, Miss Reed. Oh yes, I know exactly who he is and why he came to Jefferson. The question is, what did he tell you? Nathaniel lifted her chin slightly. Nothing that would interest you, Mr. Matthews. Or should I call you by another name? A flicker of something surprise, perhaps, or admiration crossed his features. So he did confide in you. Interesting. Sullivan has never been known to trust easily, especially with women. Perhaps he recognized something in me that you wouldn't understand. Nathaniel's fear was receding now, replaced by a cold anger at this man who had caused so much pain. A quality beyond your comprehension. Matthews chuckled. Loyalty, you mean, or perhaps love? Believe me, Miss Reed, I understand both perfectly well. They're the most exploitable of human weaknesses. Is that why you're here, Mr. Matthews? To exploit a perceived weakness? I'm here to deliver an invitation, actually. He reached into his coat and produced an envelope, extending it toward her. To my celebration, this Saturday at Circle M. I'd be honored if you would attend and perhaps favor us with a song or two. I'm willing to pay handsomely for your talents. Nathaniel made no move to take the envelope. Why would you invite me? We've barely exchanged 10 words before tonight. Let's call it curiosity. Matthews continued holding out the invitation. I've heard so much about the cursed woman of Jefferson. I'd like to see if the rumors have any foundation in reality. And if I decline? His smile remained pleasant, though his eyes hardened slightly. That would be disappointing. I've found that celebrations are always improved by beautiful music and beautiful women. Besides, so many of Jefferson's citizens will be there. It would be a perfect opportunity for you to improve your standing in the community. The implied threat was subtle but unmistakable. Refuse, and her tentative progress in Jefferson might be undone. Accept and walk willingly into the lion's den. With reluctance, Nathaniel took the envelope. I'll consider it. Excellent. Matthews remounted his horse with fluid ease. The celebration begins at 4 o'clock. Carriages will depart from in front of the hotel at 3 for those without their own transportation. He tipped his hat. Good evening, Miss Reed. I look forward to Saturday. As he rode away, Nathaniel clutched the invitation in trembling fingers. The encounter had confirmed what Sheriff Davis suspected. Matthews was indeed Blackwell, and he knew exactly who Adam Sullivan was. Worse, he seemed to know of her connection to Adam, and perhaps even of their communication. The walk back to her cabin seemed endless, shadows taking on menacing shapes in her heightened state of awareness. Once inside, doors locked and curtains drawn, Nathaniel opened the invitation with unsteady hands. The card inside was expensive, the printing elegant. Mr. Martin Matthews requests the pleasure of your company to celebrate the success of Circle M Ranch Saturday, October 12, 1878, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Music, dancing, and refreshments. A handwritten note had been added at the bottom in a refined script. Miss Reed, your voice would be a welcome addition to our celebration. $20 for 3 songs of your choosing. $20, nearly a week's wages for a few minutes of singing. The offer was generous enough to raise suspicion. Nathaniel set the invitation on her table and paced the small confines of her cabin. Matthews's appearance on the road tonight had been no coincidence. He had been waiting for her, had specifically sought her out. The question was why? To intimidate her, to confirm her connection to Adam, or for some purpose she couldn't yet discern. More importantly, what should she do now? Accept the invitation and walk into what might well be a trap, or refuse and potentially provoke a man who had already demonstrated his capacity for violence. Sleep eluded her that night, her mind turning over possibilities and dangers until dawn lightened the eastern sky. With morning came a decision. She would attend Matthews's celebration, but not before speaking with Sheriff Davis. If Blackwell was planning something beyond a simple social gathering, the sheriff needed to be aware. As she dressed for her day at the dressmaker's shop, Nathaniel found herself listening for hoofbeats on the road, hoping against hope that Adam had received her letter and was already riding back to Jefferson. But the morning remained quiet, the road empty save for a passing farm wagon laden with produce bound for market. Whatever came next, she realized, she might have to face it alone. Sheriff Davis's reaction to her nighttime encounter with Matthews confirmed her worst fears. They sat in his office, the door closed against curious ears as she recounted the conversation. "He's testing you," Davis said when she had finished. "Seeing how much you know, how much Sullivan told you. He invited me to the celebration at Circle M." Nathaniel placed the invitation on Davis's desk. "Offered to pay me to sing." Davis examined the card with a frown. "This puts us in a difficult position. If you refuse, he'll know something's amiss. If you accept, I'd be walking into the home of a known killer." Nathaniel's voice was steady despite her apprehension. "But I don't see that I have much choice. Half the town will be there. If I'm the only person who declines, it will draw attention. I don't like it." Davis leaned back in his chair, his expression troubled. "Matthews must have a reason for wanting you there specifically. It can't be just about your singing. Could he be using me as bait, to draw Adam back to Jefferson? Possibly. Though if Sullivan received your letter, he's already on his way." Davis tapped his fingers thoughtfully on the desk. "There's another possibility. With so many of Jefferson's citizens gathered at Circle M, the town itself will be relatively unguarded." Understanding dawned. "You think it's a diversion? For what purpose?" "I don't know, but I'm not taking any chances." Davis stood, moving to gaze out his office window at the busy Main Street. "I've wired the U.S. Marshal's office in Tucson, requested assistance based on the information Wilson provided about Matthews's true identity. With luck, we'll have federal agents here by Friday." "And if they don't arrive in time?" Davis turned back to face her. "Then we proceed carefully. I'll attend Matthews's celebration myself, along with 2 deputies. You'll go as well, accept his offer to sing, but you'll stay close to me or my men at all times." "You think he means me harm?" "I think James Blackwell didn't get where he is by leaving loose ends." Davis's expression was grave. "And right now, Miss Reed, You're the loosest end in his carefully constructed life. The remainder of the week passed in a strange limbo of normalcy and dread. Nathaniel continued her work at the dressmaker's shop, sang her usual nights at the saloon, and exchanged pleasantries with the gradually warming townspeople, all while watching, waiting for Adam's return or some sign of Matthews's true intentions. By Friday evening, with no word from Adam and the Circle M celebration looming the next day, Nathaniel made final preparations. She selected a dress of deep burgundy, elegant but practical, with room for movement if needed. Beneath its folds, she would carry her small derringer, loaded and ready. The songs she would sing were chosen with equal care, familiar ballads that would please the crowd without requiring her full concentration, allowing her to remain alert to her surroundings. As she rehearsed quietly in her cabin that night, a soft knock at her door froze her mid-note. No one visited her after dark, no one except Adam, and he was still absent. "Who is it?" she called, retrieving the derringer from its drawer. "Sheriff Davis, Miss Reed. Need a word." Relief flooded her as she opened the door to find Davis on her porch, his expression uncharacteristically urgent. "What's happened?" she asked, ushering him inside. "Sullivan's back," Davis said without preamble. "Arrived an hour ago, rode straight to my office." "Adam's here." Joy and apprehension battled within her. "Where is he now?" "Getting cleaned up at the hotel. He rode hard from Prescott once he got your letter." Davis removed his hat. "But that's not all. The marshal's men arrived this afternoon, 3 of them, staying out of sight at the livery stable. So they'll arrest Matthews tomorrow. That's the plan. During the celebration, when most of his hands will be busy with guests." Davis hesitated. "Sullivan wants to be part of it." Nathaniel closed her eyes briefly. Of course Adam would want to be present when his brother's killer was finally brought to justice. And will he be? "The marshal's men aren't happy about it, but yes, he knows Blackwell better than any of us." Davis studied her carefully. "Sullivan asked about you, wanted to know if you were safe." A warmth spread through Nathaniel despite the circumstances. "When can I see him?" "That's the thing, he thinks it's better if you don't. Not before tomorrow." Davis's expression was sympathetic. "He's worried that Matthews has been watching you, that any change in your routine might alert him." The disappointment was acute, but Nathaniel understood the logic. "So I should just proceed as planned, attend the celebration." "Yes, but with a difference. Sullivan will be there too, posing as the cousin of one of my deputies." Davis lowered his voice, though they were alone in the cabin. "The plan is to let the gathering get underway, wait until Matthews is occupied with his guests, then make the arrest quietly, away from the main celebration. And my role in this, proceed exactly as Matthews expects. Sing your songs, accept your payment, give no indication that anything unusual is happening." Davis's gaze was steady. "Can you do that, Miss Reed?" Nathaniel thought of Adam, so close after weeks of separation, yet still beyond her reach for a few more hours. She thought of Matthews's calculating eyes, the threat beneath his cultured veneer. She thought of Thomas Sullivan, dead because of the man who now called himself Martin Matthews. "Yes," she said firmly. "I can do that." Davis nodded, satisfied. "Sullivan said to tell you." He paused, seeming uncomfortable with the personal nature of the message. "He said to tell you that he's kept his promise, that he's coming back to you with this chapter closed." The words, so clearly Adam's though delivered by the gruff sheriff, brought tears to Nathaniel's eyes. "Thank you, Sheriff. Please tell him. Tell him I'm holding him to that." After Davis left, Nathaniel found sleep impossible. Adam was in Jefferson, perhaps only a few hundred yards away at the hotel. Tomorrow, the man he had hunted for 2 years would finally face justice. And after that, perhaps, A future might begin, one where neither of them had to run anymore. Saturday dawned clear and cool, a perfect autumn day in the Arizona Territory. Nathaniel prepared with methodical care, packing the few items she might need in a small reticule, including the derringer. Her burgundy dress, with its modest neckline and elegant lines, made her look respectable without drawing undue attention, precisely the effect she desired. At precisely 3 o'clock, she presented herself at the hotel where carriages were gathering to transport guests to Circle M Ranch. Among the crowd of excited townspeople, she spotted Sheriff Davis and 2 of his deputies, dressed in their Sunday best, but with badges discreetly hidden. She searched the faces for Adam, but didn't see him, though Davis had mentioned he would travel separately to avoid being recognized by any of Matthews's men who might know him by sight. The journey to Circle M took nearly 40 minutes, the procession of carriages raising dust that gilded the afternoon light. As they crested the final hill, Nathaniel caught her first glimpse of the ranch, a sprawling main house of whitewashed adobe, surrounded by well-kept-out buildings and corrals. Colorful bunting decorated the wide veranda, and tables had been arranged in the yard beneath shade trees still clinging to their summer foliage. Already, dozens of guests milled about the property, the women in bright dresses that stood out against the earthy backdrop, the men in their finest suits and hats. A small group of musicians played near the house, their lively tunes carrying on the breeze. "Quite the spread," remarked Mrs. Peterson, seated beside Nathaniel in the carriage. "Mr. Matthews certainly knows how to entertain." "Indeed," Nathaniel replied, noting the number of ranch hands positioned around the property, too many for a simple social gathering, and all of them armed. The observation increased her unease. As the carriage pulled up before the main house, a ranch hand helped them descend. Nathaniel had barely set foot on the ground when Martin Matthews himself appeared, resplendent in a tailored black suit with a silver brocade waistcoat. "Miss Reed," he greeted her, taking her gloved hand and bowing over it. "I'm delighted you could join us. You look absolutely stunning. Thank you for the invitation, Mr. Matthews." She kept her tone cordial but reserved. "Your ranch is impressive. Built by the previous owner, but I've made some improvements." His smile was all charm as he tucked her hand into the crook of his arm. "Come, let me show you where you'll be singing later. I've arranged a special area with excellent acoustics." As Matthews led her away from the other arrivals, Nathaniel cast a quick glance behind her, noting Sheriff Davis watching their departure with barely concealed concern. She gave him a slight nod of reassurance before turning her attention back to her host. "I thought perhaps after the meal, around 6 o'clock, would be ideal for your performance," Matthews was saying as they walked toward a raised platform near the musicians. "The light will be perfect then, that golden hour before sunset that flatters everyone." "Whatever you prefer, Mr. Matthews." "It's your celebration, after all." Nathaniel maintained a polite smile. "May I ask what exactly we're celebrating? I've heard various rumors in town." Matthews's laugh seemed genuine. "People do love their speculations, don't they? The truth is rather mundane, I'm afraid. I've just completed a very profitable cattle sale, 2,000 head to buyers from California. This gathering is partly to thank Jefferson for its warm welcome these past months, and partly—" He paused dramatically, "to announce my plans for the future." "Which are?" Nathaniel prompted when he didn't continue. "All in good time, my dear Miss Reed." They had reached the platform, and Matthews gestured expansively. "Will this suit your needs? I can have the musicians provide accompaniment if you'd like." The platform offered a good view of the entire celebration area, and Nathaniel noted, was positioned with her back to the main house, facing the gathered crowd. Anyone approaching from behind would be unseen until they were upon her. "It's perfect," she said, suppressing her misgivings. "And yes, accompaniment would be lovely. Perhaps just the piano. Consider it done." Matthews's eyes, so charming on the surface, held that calculating quality she had noticed during their encounter on the road. "Now, let me introduce you to some of our other guests." So many have expressed curiosity about the talented singer from Jefferson. For the next hour, Nathaniel found herself guided from group to group, introduced to ranchers from neighboring properties, businessmen from as far away as Tucson, and their elegantly dressed wives. Through it all, Matthews remained at her side, the perfect host, attentive, charming, and completely in control of his environment. She caught occasional glimpses of Sheriff Davis and his deputies circulating through the crowd, but saw no sign of Adam or the U.S. Marshals. Whatever plan they had formulated was progressing invisibly against the backdrop of social gaiety. As the sun began its westward descent, guests were directed to long tables arranged beneath the trees, laden with food that put Jefferson's usual fare to shame. Matthews seated Nathaniel near himself at the head table, positioning her between the local banker and a cattle buyer from California. "Mr. Matthews certainly knows how to impress," the banker commented as servants poured wine into crystal glasses that must have cost a small fortune to transport to the territory. "Hard to believe he's only been in Jefferson a few months. Where was he before?" Nathaniel asked casually, accepting a portion of roast beef from a passing server. "California, I believe. San Francisco." The banker lowered his voice confidentially. "Made his fortune in mining investments, or so I've heard. Lucky man, everything he touches seems to turn to gold." Or to blood, Nathaniel thought, but kept the observation to herself. As the meal progressed, she noticed subtle movements at the edges of the gathering, men in nondescript clothing moving with purpose rather than social enjoyment. The marshals, taking positions. Sheriff Davis, seated 3 tables away, caught her eye briefly and gave a nearly imperceptible nod. It was almost time. The sun touched the distant mountains, bathing the celebration in warm golden light just as Matthews had predicted. He rose from his seat, tapping a spoon against his crystal glass to gain attention. The conversations gradually quieted as guests turned expectantly toward their host. "Friends, neighbors, distinguished visitors," Matthews began, his voice carrying easily across the gathering. "Thank you for joining me on this beautiful evening to celebrate not just a successful business venture, but what I hope will be the beginning of a long and prosperous relationship between Circle M Ranch and the good people of Jefferson." Approving murmurs and light applause greeted this sentiment. "When I arrived here 4 months ago, I was simply looking for a quiet place to establish new roots after many years of travel and enterprise. What I found was more than just a beautiful landscape. I found a community of hardworking, honest people who exemplify the best of what this territory has to offer." Nathaniel watched him carefully, noting how thoroughly he commanded the attention of every person present. His charisma was undeniable, his performance flawless. It was easy to see how such a man could gain trust, manipulate perceptions, create the perfect cover for his true nature. Before we continue with our evening's entertainment, and I'm pleased to say we'll be treated to songs by the talented Miss Reed shortly, I have an announcement to make. Matthews's smile widened, his gaze sweeping the crowd with practiced inclusivity. "As many of you have speculated, I am indeed planning to expand my presence in Jefferson. I've recently purchased the abandoned silver mine east of town and will be reopening operations next month, bringing jobs and prosperity to the region." The announcement was met with enthusiastic applause. The silver mine had been closed for 2 years, its depletion leaving many local men unemployed. The prospect of its revival was indeed cause for celebration in a town that had struggled economically. Additionally, Matthews continued when the applause subsided, I'm establishing a charitable foundation to benefit Jefferson's school and church. The first disbursement of funds will occur next week, with construction of a new schoolhouse to begin before winter. More applause, even more enthusiastic than before. Nathaniel glanced toward Sheriff Davis, whose expression had grown increasingly troubled. The U.S. Marshals were still moving into position, but Matthews's announcement was winning him the unqualified support of everyone present. Arresting such a benefactor would not be popular, regardless of the evidence against him. And finally, Matthews raised his glass higher. A personal note. Many of you have wondered why a man of my years remains unmarried. This brought knowing chuckles from the crowd. I'm pleased to announce that this situation will soon be remedied. I have proposed marriage to a lady of refinement and character, and she has done me the great honor of accepting. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the gathering. Mrs. Peterson, seated at a nearby table, flushed with either hope or embarrassment. My fiancée is not present today. She remains in San Francisco, completing some business affairs, but will join us in Jefferson before Christmas. Matthews's smile turned apologetic toward Mrs. Peterson and several other eligible women present. I'm sure she will be welcomed with the same warmth you've shown me. As the congratulations flowed from the assembled guests, Nathaniel noticed increased activity at the periphery of the celebration. The marshals were moving closer, converging from multiple directions. Sheriff Davis had risen from his table, casually making his way toward Matthews. And then she saw him, Adam, dressed in clothes she didn't recognize, his hat pulled low but his familiar profile unmistakable as he approached from the direction of the main house. He moved with purpose, his gaze fixed on Matthews's back. The moment was upon them. Matthews set down his glass and turned toward Nathaniel. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I invite you to direct your attention to our entertainment. Miss Reed has kindly agreed to favor us with her remarkable voice. He extended his hand to her, and Nathaniel rose, accepting his escort to the platform she had examined earlier. As they walked, she sensed Adam changing direction to intercept them before they reached the raised stage. You've made quite an impression on Jefferson today, she said, deliberately slowing their pace. The mine, the foundation, very generous. I believe in investing in community, Matthews replied smoothly. It pays dividends beyond the merely financial, and creates goodwill that might be useful if one's past catches up to them. The words slipped out before she could reconsider, a dangerous gamble. Matthews's step faltered almost imperceptibly, his grip on her arm tightening. An interesting observation, Miss Reed. I wouldn't have thought you so. Politically minded. I've learned to recognize self-interest disguised as generosity, Mr. Matthews. They had nearly reached the platform. Adam was 30 feet away now, moving steadily closer. Or should I call you Blackwell? The name, spoken aloud between them for the first time, struck like a physical blow. Matthews stopped walking, turning to face her fully, his charming mask slipping to reveal something cold and dangerous beneath. Who told you that name? His voice was soft, meant only for her ears. Does it matter? Nathaniel met his gaze steadily, aware they were creating a small scene, guests turning to watch their exchange. What matters is that others know it too, others with the authority to act on that knowledge. Matthews's eyes narrowed, scanning the crowd with new awareness. He spotted Sheriff Davis approaching from one direction, noted the unfamiliar men converging from others. You've been busy, Miss Reed. His smile returned, though it no longer reached his eyes. "Unfortunately, so have I." Before she could respond, Matthews's hand moved to his jacket pocket, emerging with a small revolver pressed discreetly against her side. "Smile for our audience, my dear. We're going to walk very calmly toward the house now. Any signal to your friends, any cry for help, and I promise you won't be the only one who pays the price." To emphasize his point, he gestured subtly toward where several children played near the refreshment tables, oblivious to the drama unfolding. "You wouldn't," Nathaniel whispered, though she knew with sickening certainty that he would. "I've survived this long by being prepared for contingencies." Matthews began guiding her toward the house, his grip painful on her arm, the gun a constant pressure against her ribs. "Your singing platform was positioned quite deliberately. Miss Reed offers clear lines of fire to several key areas of the gathering." Understanding dawned with horrible clarity. "You have men positioned to shoot into the crowd. Insurance, let's call it. Now move." They had taken only a few steps when Adam stepped directly into their path, his stance casual but his eyes hard as flint. "Evening, Blackwell," he said, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. "It's been a while." Matthews froze, recognition and hatred flashing across his features. "Sullivan. I thought you might turn up eventually." Around them, the festive atmosphere faltered as guests sensed the tension radiating from the three figures standing in their midst. Sheriff Davis had changed course, moving more quickly now, signaling to his deputies. The marshals, too, were closing in, hands near their weapons. "Let her go," Adam said, his voice deceptively calm. "It's me you want to deal with, on the contrary." Matthews pressed the gun more firmly against Nathaniel's side. "Miss Reed has proven quite useful. Did you know there are 4 men with rifles positioned around this gathering? One word from me, one signal, and this celebration becomes a massacre." Adam's gaze flicked briefly to Nathaniel's face, reading her fear but also her determination. "Always hiding behind others, Blackwell. Never facing consequences directly, just like in Kansas City." The mention of Kansas City sent a visible tremor through Matthews. "Your brother was collateral damage, Sullivan, nothing personal." "It was personal to me." Adam's hand hovered near his holster, but he made no move to draw. "And now it's personal to every law officer in 3 territories. The U.S. Marshals are here, Blackwell. Your men are being disarmed as we speak. It's over." For a fraction of a second, doubt flickered in Matthews's expression. It was enough. Nathaniel drove her elbow hard into his stomach, simultaneously twisting away from the gun. Matthews staggered backward, the weapon discharging harmlessly into the ground. Adam moved with lightning speed, closing the distance between them and tackling Matthews before he could recover. They fell together, wrestling for control of the revolver. Around them, chaos erupted, women screaming, men shouting, the crowd scattering in all directions. Sheriff Davis and the marshals converged on the struggling pair, weapons drawn. 2 of Matthews's ranch hands started forward, reaching for their guns, but were quickly subdued by deputies positioned nearby. Nathaniel stumbled backward from the confrontation, watching in horror as Adam and Matthews fought with desperate intensity. The gun between them discharged again, the report seemingly louder than before. For one terrible moment, both men went still. Then Matthews slumped to the ground, a dark stain spreading across his silver brocade waistcoat. Adam pushed himself up slowly, breathing hard, his face grim as he looked down at the man who had haunted his existence for 2 years. "Thomas Sullivan," he said quietly to the dying man. "That was my brother's name. Remember it in hell." Matthews's eyes, already glazing, found Nathaniel standing nearby. "The curse," he whispered, blood bubbling at the corner of his mouth. "It follows. You still." Then he was gone, his final breath escaping in a soft sigh that was lost amid the continued commotion of the disrupted celebration. Adam rose unsteadily to his feet as the marshals moved in to confirm what was already evident. His gaze found Nathaniel across the intervening space, relief washing over his features when he saw she was unharmed. She went to him then, heedless of the watching crowd, of the whispers already beginning about the cursed woman and another death in her wake. Adam's arms enfolded her, solid and real and alive, his heart thundering beneath her ear as she pressed against his chest. "I thought I'd lost you," he murmured into her hair, "when I saw that gun against you." "I'm all right," she assured him, drawing back to examine his face, his body checking for injuries. "Are you hurt? The shot went wild." He caught her searching hands in his. "I'm fine, Nathaniel, it's over." It's finally over. Sheriff Davis approached them, his expression somber but relieved. "Sullivan, Miss Reed, you both all right?" They nodded, still holding onto each other as if afraid to break contact. "Matthews's men are surrendering without a fight," Davis reported. "Seems they were well paid, but not willing to die for a dead employer. The marshals are securing the property, searching for the stolen money." "And the gathering?" Nathaniel asked, aware of the disruption their drama had caused to Jefferson's social event of the season. Davis's mouth twisted wryly. "Most folks have left in quite a hurry. Can't say I blame them. Not exactly what they expected from an afternoon of celebration." "Will there be trouble for either of you?" Nathaniel glanced between Adam and the sheriff. "The marshals will handle the official report," Davis assured them. "Self-defense during the apprehension of a wanted criminal, cut and dried." Adam's arm remained around Nathaniel's waist, a protective anchor. "And Blackwell's claims about Jefferson, the mine, the foundation." "Likely empty promises backed by stolen money," Davis sighed. "The town will be disappointed when the truth comes out, but better that than continuing to be deceived." As the initial shock of the confrontation began to fade, Nathaniel became aware of curious and wary glances from the remaining guests and workers. The whispers were already starting another man dead in her presence, another tragedy following in her wake. Adam noticed too, his arm tightening around her. "Take her home, Sheriff," he said quietly. "I'll help the marshals here, then join you in town." Davis nodded, understanding the unspoken concern. "Come on, Miss Reed. My wagon's over by the corral." Reluctantly, Nathaniel separated from Adam, though not before he pressed a quick, fierce kiss to her forehead. "I'll come to you as soon as I can," he promised. "We have a future to discuss." The journey back to Jefferson passed in a blur for Nathaniel, the events at Circle M replaying in her mind like scenes from a disturbing play. Matthews's final words echoed particularly loudly. "The curse follows you still." A dying man's attempt to perpetuate the very rumors that had haunted her for years. Would Jefferson believe them? Or would the truth about Matthews's identity overshadow any new whispers about her supposed curse? Sheriff Davis seemed to read her thoughts as they approached town in the gathering dusk. "Folks will talk for a while," he said gruffly. "They always do. But they'll also learn that Matthews Blackwell was a wanted man responsible for multiple deaths across the territories. That changes the story considerably." "Does it?" Nathaniel wasn't convinced. "Or does it simply add another chapter to the existing narrative? Depends on what you do next." Davis guided the wagon down Jefferson's Main Street, nearly deserted at this hour as most citizens were either still at Circle M or safely at home for the evening. Running again would only confirm their suspicions. "I'm not running." The words emerged with surprising conviction. "Not this time." Davis nodded approvingly. "Good. Jefferson could use more folks with your kind of backbone, Miss Reed. He delivered her to her cabin and waited until she was safely inside before departing with a promise to send word when Adam returned to town. Alone at last, Nathaniel removed her burgundy dress, still elegant despite the afternoon's events, and changed into simpler attire. The small cabin felt different, somehow no longer a refuge from a hostile town, but simply a home, a starting point rather than a hiding place. She moved around the familiar space, lighting lamps against the deepening night, putting water on to boil for tea, ordinary actions that grounded her after the extraordinary events of the day. When the knock came, nearly 2 hours later, she knew it was Adam even before his voice called her name. She opened the door to find him standing on her porch, looking weary but unburdened in a way she hadn't seen before. "May I come in?" he asked, hat in hand, suddenly formal despite everything they had shared. "Of course." She stepped aside, closing the door behind him as he entered. "Are you hungry? I can make something." "No, thank you." He set his hat on the table, turning to face her fully. "The marshals found the money, most of it anyway, hidden in a secret compartment in Blackwell's study. They'll return it to the bank in Tucson." "That's good." Nathaniel remained near the door, uncertain suddenly of where they stood. What came next? What about his men? Most are being held as accessories. A few those who were genuinely just ranch hands with no knowledge of Blackwell's activities have been released. Adam took a step toward her, then stopped, as if sensing her need for space. "The marshals want my statement in writing. I'll need to travel to Tucson next week to formalize everything." "I see." The practical details felt safe, a buffer against the deeper currents flowing beneath their conversation. "Nathaniel." Her name on his lips was gentle, questioning. "Are you all right, truly?" The simple inquiry broke through her careful composure. "I don't know," she admitted, tears finally welling in her eyes after hours of control. "Matthews is dead, another man gone because of me." "No." Adam closed the distance between them then, taking her shoulders in a firm but gentle grip. "Not because of you. Because of his own choices, his own actions. He was a killer long before he met you, Nathaniel. What happened today was justice, not a curse." She looked up at him, wanting desperately to believe. His last words were the manipulations of a dying man who knew exactly how to hurt you most. Adam's hands moved to frame her face, thumbs brushing away the tears that had escaped. "Don't give him that power. Not now, not ever." The truth of his words penetrated the fear that had wrapped itself around her heart. Matthews Blackwell had indeed known how to wound her most effectively, even in death. His final attempt to ensure she remained trapped in the narrative that had defined her for so long. "You're right," she whispered, drawing strength from Adam's steady presence. "It ends now, all of it." "Yes." His smile was tender, his eyes filled with something that made her breath catch. "And something else begins if you want it to." "What exactly did you have in mind, Mr. Sullivan?" The question emerged lighter than she'd intended, hope threading through the words. "A future. Together." His thumbs continued their gentle caress against her cheeks. "I meant what I said before I left, Nathaniel. I've spent 2 years chasing ghosts, seeking vengeance instead of peace. That chapter of my life is closed now. And the next chapter depends on you." He drew a deep breath. "I have some money saved, my payment from the bank in Tucson, plus what remains from my ranger days. Enough to start something new. A small ranch, perhaps, somewhere near Jefferson, if that's where you want to stay." The offer, the future he was proposing, was so much more than she had dared to hope for. "You would stay here, despite everything that's happened." "I would stay wherever you are." The simple declaration held no artifice, no reservation. "I love you, Nathaniel Reed. Have since that first day in the general store when you stood so tall against their whispers." The words so long unspoken between them unlocked something in Nathaniel's heart, a chamber sealed against hope that now flooded with light. "I love you too," she said softly, the admission both terrifying and freeing. "But Adam, the town, will either accept us or not. Either way, we face it together." His certainty was unwavering. "No more running, remember." "No more running," she agreed, reaching up to touch his face, the stubble rough beneath her fingertips. "A small ranch sounds perfect, and I can continue sewing, perhaps expand beyond dresses to household items, and sing if Forster still wants me at the saloon. He'd be a fool to let you go." Adam's smile widened. "Though I have to warn you I'm a possessive man. Might have to discourage any admirers who get ideas from hearing that voice of yours." Nathaniel laughed, the sound surprising her after the tensions of the day. "I think my reputation will discourage most admirers quite effectively. For now, perhaps, but reputations can change." He leaned down, his lips hovering just above hers. "Eventually, they'll know you only as Mrs. Sullivan, with a voice like an angel and a husband who considers himself the luckiest man in the territory." "Mrs. Sullivan," she repeated, testing the sound of it. "I like that." "Good." His mouth claimed hers then, the kiss deep and thorough, a sealing of promises and a beginning all at once. When they finally parted, both breathless, he rested his forehead against hers. "Stay with me tonight?" "Yes," she answered without hesitation. "Tonight and all the nights to come." Later, as they lay together in her narrow bed, the troubles of Jefferson and its opinions seemed distant, unimportant compared to the reality of Adam's arms around her, his heartbeat strong and steady beneath her cheek. "You think they'll ever stop calling me cursed?" she asked drowsily, sleep beginning to claim her after the emotional exhaustion of the day. Adam's hand stroked her hair, his voice rumbling pleasantly in his chest. "If they don't, we'll give them a different kind of curse to talk about, the curse of being proved wrong at every turn. We'll build a life so filled with happiness and prosperity that they'll be forced to reconsider every superstition they've ever held." MMM. She smiled against his skin. "I like the sound of that." "Besides," he added, pressing a kiss to the top of her head, "if loving you makes me cursed, then I'm proud to be your chosen fool, now and always." In the years that followed, Jefferson would indeed witness the transformation of whispers and suspicions into a very different story. The small ranch 3 miles outside town, purchased with Adam Sullivan's savings and expanded through hard work and determination. The thriving dressmaking business that Nathaniel established, eventually employing 3 local women, including Sarah Thompson. The Saturday nights at the Silver Dollar, where Mrs. Sullivan still sang occasionally, her husband watching from a corner table with undisguised admiration. And eventually, the children, first a son with his father's dark hair and storm-gray eyes, then twin daughters with their mother's honey-gold locks and indomitable spirit. The curse, as curses often do when exposed to the light of truth and love, gradually lost its power, fading into a half-remembered tale that old-timers sometimes mentioned but new arrivals to Jefferson found difficult to believe. For how could a curse possibly touch a family so obviously blessed? As for Nathaniel and Adam Sullivan, they never forgot the path that brought them together, the whispers, the danger, the confrontation that ended one chapter and began another. But those memories served only to deepen their appreciation for the life they built, a testament to the power of standing one's ground and facing fear with courage. And if, on occasion, Adam still referred to himself as her chosen fool, it was with a smile that spoke of promises kept and a love that had transformed them both from lonely wanderers into something far greater, a family, rooted in truth, strengthened by trials, and flourishing in the rich soil of mutual devotion. In Jefferson, Arizona Territory, they had found not just each other, but home, the one place neither of them had truly known before. And that, perhaps, was the greatest triumph over the curse that had never really existed at all.